أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. I would like to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I know that people are busy and they have responsibilities. So for that reason, I know that many people were not able to make it. We have well over 150 students in our school, but we see that most of the fathers aren't here. And inshallah ta'ala, that's due to the fact that they're working, or maybe they have some sick parents that they're taking care of, or some other type of major responsibility. So what I would like to request from everyone who actually is here, please reach out to the people that you know that are fathers to students in the school, and please inform them that it is important, inshallah ta'ala, that they come to the Facebook page. So this is why we're doing it live. We wasn't planning on live streaming this evening. However, due to the fact that there's so many absent people, felt it necessary to live stream it, to make it available for those who were not able to make it. Inshallah ta'ala, it'll be available on our Facebook page immediately after we're done. And it'll make it available, inshallah, on the website. I had invited, what I wanted to do is I wanted to mention to the fathers several different issues pertaining to the weekend school. First, I wanted everybody to understand the importance of having a weekend school in the masjid. Why do we even have, why is it necessary that we have this weekend school? Most of us, or I would venture to say all of us, have our children in some type of schooling program here in Osceola County. Whether it is the public school or it is the Mago or Ibn Sina, or some type of school that's you're taking your children to, or you're sending your children to be schooled in that facility or in that institution. Now, up until now, I have not had the opportunity to actually sit with the board in Mago, nor have I had the opportunity to sit with the board in Ibn Sina to take a look at their curriculum. So the things I'm going to say are not pertaining to those two schools. However, I've been to a lot of different schools, I'm referring to the Muslim schools around the country, and every single school that has the title of Muslim school or Islamic school, the full-time Muslim school, it runs its math and science and English curriculum based on the requirements of that particular state. It runs its requirements, or the English class, biology class, the chemistry class, the physics class, English class, geometry class, algebra class. All of those classes are run exactly according to the curriculum that has been laid out by that particular state. And in a lot of cases, and I'm going to venture to say that most cases, they're even using the textbooks from the state, or that have been approved by the state to be taught for those particular subjects. And so the Muslim school or the Islamic school, as far as the science and math and English, is absolutely no different than what's being taught in the curriculum of the public school. science and math, and the different, we call them electives. The curriculum is the same exact curriculum. Now, what a lot of us who did not grow up here, and I know I'm looking around, I'm looking and I'm seeing that most of you grew up in some other place. So you went to school, your elementary school, your middle school, and your high school, in some other place, whether it's Morocco or Pakistan or Egypt or some other place, you grew up in the Muslim country, and maybe you're not aware necessarily of the classes that our children are taking here in the school system in the United States. Now I'm going to tell you, inshallah, and this is getting back to the point of why it's important to have the Islamic weekend school in the masjid, and it's because every single day that we send our children to the brick and mortar school to learn science and math and English, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Edgar Allan Poe, every day that we're sending them to these schools to learn this curriculum, they are teaching our children kufr. They're teaching our children kufr. Now I know that a lot of us, we send our children, some of the brothers here who choose to send their children to the Muslim school is because you want your children to be away from the kuffar, right? The kuffar children, I understand that. However, the dangerous part of the regular public school is not your children associating with the other non-Muslim kids. I'm not saying that's not dangerous, but that's not the real dangerous, problematic part. The problematic part is what they're actually, the teacher who comes in and is teaching them this curriculum. Now, so for example, anybody know in what they call history or world geography and those classes, anybody know what they're actually teaching them? What's the curriculum? When they say your child goes to social studies and he's learning history or he's learning world geography, are they studying the history of Morocco? Huh? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Are they studying the history of the Ottoman Empire? Huh? Like this, right? If I start asking you questions, I guarantee you're not going to be able to answer. What they're going to do is they're going to give you snippets of the Ottoman Empire. They're definitely not giving you any history about the Umayyad, the Umayyad period or the Abbasi period. They're not going through the history of the Fatimi period. They're not going through the history of even how Rome actually fell, or how the Persians actually fell. They're not going through that history. How the Muslims went up against Persia, and the treasures of Kisra were brought back to Al-Medina during the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. They're not going through any of that history. The angle that they're coming from is the angle of European history. And they'll focus most of their energy and effort to give the perception of European history. They'll go through Napoleon, they'll go through all of the issues of European background and European history, and what that does is, what it does is, it brings about a principle that I have actually myself have come up with. عدم الذكر بالشيء يدل على عدمه. Not mentioning something, or lack of mentioning something, proves its non-existence. So for example, if you want to teach your child that there's no such thing as the Easter Bunny, what's the best way to do that? It's simply just not talk about it. If you want to teach your child that there's no such thing as Santa Claus, the best way to go about doing that is just simply just don't mention it. And if you don't mention it, your child won't grow up believing it, and he'll believe the exact opposite, which is that there's no such thing as Santa Claus. And so, in our school system, I actually have a friend of mine who is a graduate of the University of Medina who teaches in the public school system, and he was mentioning to me about this methodology in the curriculum, he went through the curriculum because he teaches English and he teaches some social studies. And he mentioned to me about how the curriculum is set up and to come from a European history standpoint. Okay, which I'm not saying that it's bad because we need to learn. We should know history. I'm not saying it's bad to know European history. However, the issue is not the fact of our children learning European history. It's the fact that they're not learning the narrative of every other nation and its history that's out there in order to give them a complete picture of the history of the world and the history of society. For example, science. Science, every single scientist that I've ever learned from, and I've been to school here. I did elementary school, I've done high school, I've done college, I've taken biology and different science classes on the college level here as well. And every single professor that I've ever had that taught me science was an atheist. Every single scientist that taught me was an atheist. The science class is designed to teach your children or teach children to think in theory or to think in proving something through science. And science class, if you're from the beginning to the end, it's about proving something. It's one of the first things they teach you in science class is about a hypothesis and a theory. What's the difference between the two? And so something that's a theory is what? Which one of you have taken science? Who can tell me what a theory is? Huh? No, one of the children. What's a theory? Is it educated guess? La. That's a hypothesis. Right, what's a theory?
Theory is like it's well tested, but it's not like firm.
It's well tested, but it's not even firm. And so in science, something doesn't become a theory until after it's tested. And it's tested over and over and over again. And once it's tested over and over and over again, and you kind of get the same results, then it goes from a hypothesis, then it becomes a theory. And so when your children start to get into this mind state of, we have to be able to test it, it has to be able to be proven, we have to be able to test it, it has to be able to be proven, it gets, and that's why in the unseen, the issues of the unseen can't be proven through some type of scientific method. The issues of the malaika, for example, the issues of the jinn, issues of the day of judgment, those things we don't have a scientific method to be able to prove it, which is why these science professors, they're atheists, because they don't believe in the unseen, because they can't believe in something that they can't test to be able to come up with a theory. English class. If you ever had English class, those of you who are doing high school English, and they're teaching you like Edgar Allan Poe and having you read these different books and these different poetry, the writings of Shakespeare, they teaching our children allegory. I don't know if you're familiar with what allegory actually is. Who from amongst you knows what allegory is? No one knows what allegory is? Abdul Rahman. Yes, what's allegory? You don't know what allegory is? Huh? Allegory. Huh? Yes, you take this in English. You study, they wrote books and stories to teach our children allegory. And that is, allegory is when you are reading something, or the author of a writing has wrote something, but he intends something different. He means one thing, and he intends something different. I remember when I was in high school, I was taught this story is about this king. It was a plague. It was a plague in the town, and so the king called everyone from the town into the castle. And so everybody was inside the castle, so everybody thought they were safe, and everybody's having a party. And then a joker walks in and There's these 7 different rooms, and each room has a different color. And anyway, the Joker touches the king dies. Okay, now we're finished with the story. Now it's time to start interpreting the story. What do the rooms symbolize? What does the Joker symbolize? What does the plague symbolize? What does the castle symbolize? And the people and having the party, what does that all symbolize? And to get your brain working to see or to look for a deeper meaning other than what's on face value. So now our children come out of this class and they read that, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, بَلْ يَدَاهُ مَبْسُوطَتَانِ, rather His hands are widespread, and say, well, no, this is allegory. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have a hand and all of that. They teach our children philosophy in these English classes. They teach our children Greek mythology. They teach our children Roman and Greek mythology, which is built on kufr and shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, why am I mentioning all of this? Because this is the curriculum that's being taught to our children, and this is the same curriculum that's being used as our English class and our science class and our math classes and all of these different classes that we're even using in the Muslim school. And so it's important for us to have this weekend school where at least one day out of the week our children come and their complete focus is on nothing except the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Their complete focus is on the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where what is intended from the entirety of the curriculum is to teach or to connect the child with the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to connect the child with the sciences or some of the sciences of Islam, and to connect the child with the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you. Is when we send our children off to college, it gets worse. When we send our children off to college, it gets worse. Because in college, the rules of the professor that he has to go by, the guidelines that they have to go by, is very different than what it is in high school or in the elementary, middle, and high school levels. I used to teach at the University of Missouri, and the department chair gave me free reign to kind of run the classroom exactly how I wanted and to teach what I wanted. I used to teach, I was an Arabic instructor, and I had 6 hours per week with my class, and part of the instruction that I was doing was I was adding in Arab and Islamic culture and customs in order to help them understand and learn the Arabic language and to connect with the Arabic language, because you cannot learn the Arabic language, being disconnected from the Arabs. You can't do that. And so in my class, essentially I was teaching them not just the Arabic language, alif, ba, ta, but also teaching them Islamic culture to go along with the language. So they walked out of my classroom, not just with the language, but also with it, some systems and some ideologies as well. And so if I can do that, what do you think a lot of these tenured professors, what do you think that they're doing? Those ones who are calling to atheism and calling to shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it's important for us to spend time developing these schools within our masjids, the ones that do not focus on anything except the Quran and the Sunnah, in order that when our children do go to these institutions and they go off and they have, they get these degrees from these colleges or whatever, they're well fortified with enough knowledge, with enough spirituality, that they do not lose their religion because they went to this institution. We do not want to send our child to the University of Central Florida or the University of Florida, and then our child comes home as an atheist. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Our child comes home as an atheist because they studied biology with an atheist, and they studied English 1 with an atheist. And so what we're doing in our school is actually, it's extremely important. It's extremely important. And I know that it's only one day per week. It's only actually not even a whole day. It's just a few hours. However, it's the best that we can do. I wish that we can have both days, Saturday and Sunday, where we come bring the children to the masjid. But I don't know that that's a lot of sacrificing, a lot of effort. I don't know that we'll be able to do that. And so my point of all of this is to show us the importance of having this school. And the school will not be able to function without the support of the fathers. The school will not be able to function without the support of the fathers. The father, he is the one who is actually the one making the money to actually pay the tuition for the school. So without him, he doesn't give his approval to make that payment. His wife, the mother, she's, our school, the majority of our teachers are the mothers of our children, of these mothers and these wives. They take time out of their responsibilities at home and the responsibilities towards the husband in order to come down to the masjid to be able to teach these children. And so without the father, without the husband and the father of these children giving permission and being understanding and kind and merciful and releasing some of his rights for that particular day, then that woman won't be able to come down here to be able to give the time to sit with this child, to teach that child about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, for example, the woman has responsibilities. The wife, our wife, my wife, your wife, all of our wives, they have responsibilities at home towards the husband. It's mandatory upon her to be able to put forward those responsibilities. However, I'm saying that as the husband, it's our job on this particular day, for the sake of our next generation, for the sake of Islam living on in our communities, and us passing Islam down from us to our children, it becomes mandatory for us to give our wives the time that they need in order to be able to put into that institution of our weekend school to be able to teach our children. And it's not something that, people come down here and just, having cake and cookies and drinking tea. Alhamdulillah, our teachers are teaching, and the children, inshallah ta'ala, are benefiting. And so this is something that is extremely important for us to sacrifice. It's extremely important for us to sacrifice. Even myself, my wife, she works in the school. My wife, she works in the school, and I'll be honest, I have most of the stuff in the house as far as the kitchen and food and even medicine or tea. So I don't have no idea where it is. Where does my wife keep the tea bags? If I wanted a cup of tea, I'm going to have to try to just basically go and figure it out. If I want to make something to eat, I don't know. We have 2 freezers in my house. Some stuff gets put in the big freezer, some stuff gets put in the little freezer. I don't know what their methodology is to differentiate between what goes in the big freezer and what goes in the little freezer. However, and so on that day, on Saturday, even though I'm sitting at home, and it's mandatory upon my wife to serve me. It's mandatory upon my wife to serve me. So that she doesn't have a choice. That's something, inshallah, that's for another class. For those who have issues on that, we could talk about that in another class, inshallah. But it's mandatory upon the wife to serve her husband. It's mandatory upon the wife to serve her husband the same way that it's mandatory upon the husband to provide food, clothing, and shelter. However, because of the cause, and this cause is much bigger than us. This cause is much bigger than you and I. So all of us have to sacrifice some hours of our time or give up some of our rights in order to be able to have that established. Alhamdulillah, where a lot of us come from, like in Pakistan or in Morocco or Egypt or these places, the people there have already sacrificed to build institutions. So if you go to Saudi Arabia, if you go to Kuwait, if you go to Yemen, if you go to Iraq, if you go to Morocco, you go to Algeria, the Muslims, 1,000 years ago, they sacrificed to build institutions so that you and I, as we're raising our children in Marrakesh, or if we're raising our child in Cairo, then we don't have to worry about anything. We just we go down to the administrative building, sign some papers, and we send our children to school. Because the people, alhamdulillah, at that place have already sacrificed and they've already done all the work. The problem here with us is that we haven't, right now we're living that sacrifice. Right now we're still building our institutions. We're still looking for solutions to some of the problems of our communities. And no, we may not, like for example, even our weekend school, that may not be the best way to go about doing things. There may be a better way out there. However, this is, for the time being, this is what we've been able to come up with. And so, we have to understand that we are living a legacy at this point right now. This, right now, what we're doing is history in the making. You and your wife and your children are making history. Because 30 years from now, when we're all dead and gone, none of us are here, and our children are now the ones running this institution, they're going to be carrying on the legacy that we built. And for all the sacrifices that we made. The lights that are here, the carpet that's on the floor, the AC that's running, that all comes from the sacrifices of the people sitting here. Everybody who's sitting here, put $1 in that box, then you contributed to the history and the legacy of this community. And so, I know that, as I said, in the Muslim countries, they have the Wizarat al-Awqaf. They have a section of the government who's responsible for carrying on the legacy of Islam in that particular society. We don't have a Wizarat al-Awqaf. We don't have that here. It's just you and I in our own efforts. And so we have to put forward, alaykum salam wa rahmatullah, we have to put forward the effort and the sacrifice, because what we do not want to have is that once I die and you die and we're all buried, that our institutions, they become abandoned because our children have left Islam, and we don't want that. And so I wanted, basically the point here that we're making is the importance of sacrificing to establish these institutions, not just in Masjid As-Sunnah, but these Islamic schools that we have in Masjid Al-Nur, in Masjid Al-Birr, in Dar Al-Ulum, Masjid Al-Taqwa, and the different masajid all over the country. It's important for our children to have these institutions, to be able to protect them from some of these aspects of kufr. Because our children, like Sammy, how old are you? 12? 11. Inshallah, you'll be 12 soon, no problem, inshallah. At his age, he does not yet understand the implications of certain concepts that he's being taught. He's too young for that, right? He hasn't understood some of the angles of the kuffar and some of the goals that they have. Doesn't understand that. And so he's being taught some of this stuff, but yet he's not understanding some of the ramifications of what he's being taught. So it's for you and I to build these institutions and to sacrifice for the sake of establishing them and keeping them open and keeping them running, in order that we can have a place for our children to be able to learn. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us. The second thing that I wanted to mention is a reference to the salat. The salat in our weekend school. And how important it is for, because in the Saturday school, the school runs from 10 to 2. And at 2 o'clock, we call the adhan and we have the children gather and line up and we all pray in jama'ah. I wanted to express how important that is. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Al-ahdu alladhi baynana wa baynahum as-salah, فَمَنْ تَرَكَهَا فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. The covenant between us and them is the salah. So whoever leaves it has disbelieved. Allah Azza wa Jal, in more than one ayah, has talked about the importance of the salah, even in salah in jama'ah. وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. And bow with those who bow. And bow with those who bow. Al-Imam Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, he said that this ayah is used to prove the command from Allah to pray in jama'ah. The command from Allah to pray in jama'ah. Now our children, a lot of them, in our Saturday school, that Salatul Dhuhr that we pray in jama'ah is the only time that they pray in the masjid. It's the only time that they're praying in the masjid. Now for whatever reason, and we're not going to get into people's and their issues and why that's taking place, so that's a whole other issue, but we want to express to the fathers how important it is for those children, especially the boys, to establish that salah while they're here. For our children to sit in the masjid from 10 o'clock all the way up to 1:45 to hear the adhan and then to leave and then not pray, wallahi, that's a khasara. That's an extreme loss. It's an extreme loss. And what are we teaching our children by bringing them to the masjid, and then the Muslims are lining up to pray, and then they're walking out of the door? Yeah, ikhwan, when I was here, this was last year, not this school year, but the last school year. I was lining the kids up for the salah. We called the iqamah. We called the iqamah. We were lining the children up for the salah. And one of the parents that came to the door and called their child to come out. Let's go, it's time to go. I told the child, listen, no, we're not going anywhere. It's not permissible for you to leave. The boy is maybe about 13 years old. I'm not talking about a little child. I'm talking about an older child, maybe 12 years old, 13 years old. Now me and the parent are getting into a back and forth a little bit as to why not only should your child be in the ranks making salat to Allah Azza wa Jal, but you as the parent should also be in the rank making salat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This issue of salah is extremely important. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, should I not show you the head of the affairs and its pillar? He said the head of the affairs is al-Islam, and its pillar is the salah. Its pillar is the salah. Now, this child who only prays in the masjid once per week is now not being afforded the opportunity to even make that one salah in the jama'ah. And again, if we're saying this is an Islamic school and we're trying to, as we said, we're trying to combat the kufr and the shirk that's being taught to them in these schools, we're trying to combat that, then what are we teaching them by saying it's okay, you don't have to pray in jama'ah even though the Muslims are praying? What are we teaching them? If we're not teaching our children the Quran and praying to Allah Azza wa Jalla, then what are we teaching them? Because if our child isn't praying, if you and I, if we're not praying and we're not making salat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what are we doing? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us, أول ما يحاسب به العبد يوم القيامة الصلاة. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the very first thing that the slave will be held accountable for on the Day of Judgment is the salah. The first thing that we're going to be held accountable for is the salah. Salat al-Fajr, Salat al-Dhuhr, Salat al-Asr, Salat al-Maghrib, Salat al-Isha. And I wish that we could have more time with our children to pray in the jama'ah, in the masjid. But alhamdulillah, we have this one salat that we pray. And we should make muhafadha on that salat. We should be trying our best to preserve that salat. Wallahi, ya ikhwan, when I'm leading the salat here on Saturday for dhuhr, the first rak'ah is short surah, second rak'ah, short surah. Not just short surah, but the shortest of the surah that we can find to recite. Because we know that the little children are praying behind us, and we don't want to, make it long on them. And so it's the short surahs. And so the salah is not long. The salah is not long. I don't know if we know this, but the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is that the qira'ah for salat al-dhuhr is from the tiwal al-mufassal. From the tiwal al-mufassal. Does anybody know what the mufassal are? Anybody know? Anybody can tell me? Yes. Which surah is the first surah of the mufassal? Yes.
Is it Ikhlas?
No. That's from the Qisar al-Mufassal. The Mufassal, they start from Surah Qaf. Surah Qaf is the beginning of the Mufassal. So from Surah Qaf, Surah number 50, to the end of the Quran, that's called the Mufassal. And so from Qaf to the beginning of Juz Amma, these are considered the Tiwal, the long surahs of the Mufassal. And then from the beginning of Juz Amma to around Surah Al-Shams, these are called the Awsat, the middle surahs. And then from Surah Al-Layl to the end of the Quran, these are called the Qisar al-Surah, the short surahs. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is that we recite from the Tiwal al-Mufassal, Surah Qaf, Surah Al-Qamar, Surah Al-Rahman, Surah Al-Waqi'ah. That's the same way that he used to recite in Salat Al-Fajr, is the same way he would recite in Salat Al-Dhuhr. So some of the Sahaba, they would say that one of us would be able to go home, relieve himself, make wudu, come back, and still the Prophet ﷺ would be in the first rak'ah. And so the qira'ah of the Messenger ﷺ was long for Salat al-Dhuhr. But we make it short, alhamdulillah, for the sake of people coming together. People are busy, they have things to do, they have places to go, we understand that, and we're trying our best to facilitate ease for the community. So we shorten the salah to make sure everybody can get to where it is that they're trying to go. But pulling our children out of the masjid when it's time for the salat is teaching them the exact opposite of the goals of the Islamic weekend school. We need the fathers to understand that the Salat al-Dhuhr is part of the school. Salat al-Dhuhr is a part of the school. It's a part of the program. The same way that when the part of the program is for them to learn the Arabic letters, same way the part of the program is for them to read, is to study the I Love Islam books as part of the program. Part of the program is they have pizza for lunch as part of the program. Part of the program is Salat al-Dhuhr. And actually, it's the most important part of what we do on Saturday. Praying Salat al-Dhuhr in congregation is the most important thing that we do with these children on Saturday, because the Salat is from the 5 pillars of Al-Islam. The Salat is from the 5 pillars of Al-Islam, and a person will not go to Jannah without it. If a person did not know how to recite the Quran, if a person was stumbling and getting things wrong and saying that the noon was a ba and that the jim was a kha and mixing things up, if he did that, he can still go to Jannah. He can still make it to Jannah. Without the salah, no one goes to Jannah. And so establishing Salat al-Dhuhr in Jama'ah is the most important thing that we do on that day. It's the most important thing that we do on that day. And we need the support of the fathers to be there to reiterate that point and to reiterate that fact with his wife and with his children, and so that we can we can raise the next generation of Muslims. The next point, or the last point that we want to make, inshallah ta'ala, and this will be short, is that we need for the fathers to ask questions to our children about what it is that they're learning. We need the fathers to ask questions to the children about what it is that they're learning. Talk to your children and ask them, hey, what did you learn this week? Or you learned about the story of Ad. Okay, tell me about the story of Ad. Oh, you learned about the story of the two sons of Adam. Okay, tell me about the story of the two sons of Adam. Oh, you learned about an Iman has 6 pillars. Okay, tell me about Iman having 6 pillars. You learned that how to recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. Okay, let me hear you recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. In order to be able to show our children the importance of what we're doing here and what we're studying. If our children come here for 3 hours or 4 hours, and then they go home and their father doesn't really show any interest, the mother doesn't show any interest in what it is that the child has studied or what they're doing, then the child is going to think that this is not important. The child is going to think that this is not important. And they're not going to put time into their homework. They're not going to put time into the studies. And so we need from all of us, and I'm saying this to myself because I'm a father as well. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, O you who have believed, save yourselves and your families from the fire whose fuel is men and stones, and over them are angels who are harsh and severe. They do not disobey what they've been commanded, but rather they do what Allah has commanded them. And so it's our responsibility to save ourselves and to save our families. It's our responsibility to save ourselves and to save our families. You, as the father, as the husband, you are the leader of your home. You are the leader of your home. And it becomes your responsibility to stand over your family, to make sure that your family is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Maryam, He mentioned about Ismail alayhi salam, وَكَانَ يَأْمُرُ أَهْلَهُ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ. And He used to command His family with the salah and with the zakat. Meaning, as a father, he was not only a prophet and a messenger. Ismail alayhi salam was not just a prophet and a messenger, but he was also a father and he was a husband. And he stood over his family and he led his family to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as a husband and as a father, that is one of the main responsibilities that you have. Not just to provide food, clothing, and shelter, but to provide religious and spiritual guidance. To provide religious and spiritual guidance. Your children are going to go in the direction that you take them in. Your children are going to go in the direction that you take them in. So whatever direction you lead them in, that's the direction that they're going to go in. If you don't lead them, then that's the direction they're going to go in. The direction of the person who has no leadership. The direction of the one who has no guidance. And so you and I as fathers, we have to take the reins of responsibility and to go home and lead our families to Jannah. We have to go home and lead our families to Jannah. I know that we want to provide. I know that we want our children to eat. I know that we want our children to have clothes. I know that we want to be able to have lights in the house. We want to be able to turn on the water and the water is running. But we need to also be able to get to Jannah. Because if we die and we meet Allah Azza wa Jal upon kufr or upon shirk or upon fisq and ma'asi, then what good was it for us to provide them with the best of food and the best of clothing? What good did we do for our children if they meet Allah Azza wa Jal and then blame us for not teaching them? What good have we done? And so this is the message that I wanted to give to myself first. And as I said, I'm a father. the same way that you're fathers and I'm a husband, the same way that you all are husbands. So I'm talking to myself first, and my ears are closer to my mouth than yours are. So this message is for all of us, to be a reminder, as Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and remind, for verily the reminder benefits the believer. And I don't want you all to think that I'm insulting your intelligence or anything like that. And I don't think that what I've said tonight is something that you all don't know, or I'm teaching you something, but rather this is just a reminder for us all. And sometimes we forget because of the hustle and bustle. I know it's hard. Wallahi, this is America. This is America. And America is the land of bills. As soon as you pay one bill, there's another bill in the mail. You pay that bill, another bill in the mail. Right? This is the land of bills. This is the land of busyness. I think I was just talking with, was I just talking with you, Abu Anas, about being busy, mashghul. Who was I talking? I was talking to someone who was saying that in Morocco, their family wonders, why can't you call more? And the excuse is, I'm busy. They say, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm working. You don't get any days off? Right? Because in overseas, like in the Muslim country, like when I was in Saudi Arabia, things are different. We only paid the rent twice a year. We only paid the electric bill every 3 months. We didn't have bills, coming in and out, coming in and out. And the time was just different. Like right now, it's always busy, 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 busy. But alhamdulillah, you go back home to Morocco, it's, everybody's at ease, tafaddal ma'ana, come on, sit down, have some tea, have some food, have some more food, the tabaq, ba'da tabaq, right? We're going to go and have some more tea, right? This is what people do. They just have time. Here we have no time. So I understand it's hard. I know that it's hard. And I know that it's a struggle. I know that you're trying to pay your bills, and as soon as you pay the rent, it just seems like the rent's due again. I understand that. However, we have to be able to make sure that Islam is the forefront of our mind, because we won't be successful without it. And without your efforts, without your sacrifice, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without your efforts and your sacrifice, Islam will be suffer, or the masjid, and we're going to see its effect, because we're already starting to see the effect on the communities where the masajid are shutting down. The masajid are shutting down. You have masjids that don't open except for Friday. There's no 5 daily prayers. Masjid such and such, and they only open for the Jumu'ah, because there's no one to open the doors. And we're seeing that. And we're seeing our children between the ages of 19 and 25. The masjids are empty from our children who are that age. 18 to 25, we're not seeing that age group in our masajid. And so 10 years from now, when it's time for them to step up, and it's time for them to lead, it's time for them to take positions of responsibility, then where are they going to be at? And who's going to lead the ummah after us? So inshallah ta'ala, we're going to stop here. Again, as we said, this is just a reminder for all of us. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us. Ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us tawfiq in our time and in our money. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Tafadhal Shaykh, call the adhan. And if there's anybody who has any questions after the adhan, we might have like maybe 3 minutes to have any, if anybody has any comments.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا
حي
بالله.
على الصلاة.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا
حي
بالله.
على الفلاح.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
حي على الفلاح.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
الله أكبر، الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وبعث مقام محمودا. تفضل.
This issue with the youth, I'm from New York, so I know it's not just here because it's happening up north also. But what I find here, and again, I don't know nobody, and I don't want nobody to take anything personal, but a lot of the parents refuse to let other parents enforce things on their children. Where I'm from, like if the youth were outside and the parent wasn't there, then the brother would say, "Get the match kid." There's no problem from the parents.
Right.
But I see it here that parents object to you telling their children what to do here.
Now, the brother's bringing up the point of where we have some parents who object to other adults parenting their children or disciplining their children. And I have kind of mixed feelings about this issue. And I try to be understanding to the parents who feel that they don't want anyone else having anything to say to their children. And I try to, even though I don't necessarily agree with their viewpoint, try to understand. I understand that they have parents who don't want anybody else, parenting their children or disciplining their children due to a difference of opinion as it relates to how the child should be disciplined, or what you as the father, you think that the child should be disciplined in one way, and then the other adult may come and discipline the child or say something to the child in a different way, and so you might get offended. However, if that's how you feel, if you feel that way, and so we're going to try to be understanding and considerate of your feelings. These are your children and you want to raise them. You say, okay, alhamdulillah. If that's how you feel, then you need to be the one to be over top of your child. You cannot have your child running around, jumping off of things, breaking things, writing on the walls, playing in the bathroom, making a mess. You can't have your child doing those types of things and then expect for the adult who sees your child doing it to not say anything. That's not fair. That's not fair. Because if you're going to be in the masjid, or you're going to bring your child to the masjid, and you're going to drop your child off, or whatever have you, or you're going to let your child run, that's okay. I'm not against that. But if you're going to be in the masjid drinking tea, and your child is outside breaking somebody's car, like my car got broken, right? And you expect that the adult on the scene to not say anything, that's unfair. Because basically what's going to end up happening is your child is going to be left to do whatever he wants to do. So we got one or two options. Either A, we allow for the brothers and the sisters and the adults of the community to police each other's children, because we're all uncles and aunts here. Right? That's the way that it's supposed to be, because that's what a community is. Right? We're all in this together. Or if we don't want to do that, and we refuse to do that, then at the very bare minimum, that we ourselves have to be watching and standing over our children. But to allow for the children just to go and do whatever we want, do things and break things, and then expect for the other adults not to say anything, then that's unfair to the institution, because it causes chaos in the institution. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. And I do agree with you. In order for us to have community, is your brother's children, for example, Abdul Ghani, do you have a brother? You have a brother. Okay, if you saw your brother, your blood brother, if you saw his son or his daughter doing something that they didn't have any business doing, or they're getting ready to take a knife and stick the knife into a socket, what you going to do? You're going to just watch them do it? No, you're not going to just watch them do it. Or if you saw his son taking a rock and throwing rocks at somebody else's car, you're going to just sit there and say, oh, haha, look at them throwing rocks at the cars. No, we're going to step in and say, come here, because we feel responsible. Because that's my nephew. That's my nephew. And I feel responsible for him. Likewise, we're responsible for each other. Your jama'ah is in Pakistan. Your jama'ah is in Morocco. Your jama'ah is in Guyana. Your jama'ah is somewhere else. It's not here. We are your jama'ah now. We are your jama'ah now. My children are like your children. Your children should be like my children. That's the way it's supposed to be. Because we're supposed to be brothers. Because we're all we have. We're all we got. If some of us, if a person right now, sitting right now, got sick and he couldn't go to work, who's going to pay his rent? The people sitting right here. Who's going to get up and take him to the doctor when he can't take himself to the doctor? It's the people sitting right here. The people behind us in Church Manuel, they're not going to do it. Isn't that what it's called? Church Manuel? Is that the name of it? They're not going to do it. They're not going to do that. We have to rely on each other. When you go, Abuanis, if you decided to take a vacation, you told me a month, you'll get a month. You go back to Morocco for a month. Who's going to cut your grass in the summer? Who's going to do it? Who's going to cut the grass? Who's going to come and pick the weeds? Who's going to make sure that the sprinklers are turning on? Who's going to come get the mail? Who's going to come by and make sure that, the windows aren't broken, that somebody didn't try to break into your house? Who's going to do that? Us. When you're sick in the hospital, who's going to come visit you? Us. And if you were to die, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all long lives, who's going to wash you? And who's going to bury you? And who's going to pray on you? That's us. So we're all we have. We're all we have. And so we have to learn how to get together. And I know that it's different. We got a brother from St. Lucia. Right here, Bilal from St. Lucia. Raise your hand. Bilal's from St. Lucia, right? Zahid, where are you from? You're from India. I'm sorry, I thought you were from Pakistan. I'm sorry, you're from India, right? Fairuz, where are you from? You're Guyanese. Okay, we have Morocco in the house. We have Bangladesh in the house. We have the Moroccans in the house, St. Lucia's in the house. We have all these nationalities, and I know that we're all different. We're different people. We eat different food. We speak different languages. We have different customs. We have different culture. I understand that. And sometimes it's hard to get along with other people. Sometimes we can't stand other people. We don't like the way other people chew their food. We don't like the way that they have greasy hands and stick their hands in the food and they try to give it to you. No, we don't like that. It turns us off. However, we're brothers and we're family and we all we got. So if you're going out here looking for another jama'ah, you're not going to find it. If you're going out there to look for some support from somewhere else, you're not going to find it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made us brothers and He has joined us together in Iman. And so we have to deal with us because we're all we got. Just like you and your blood brother, your cousins, sometimes y'all don't get along, y'all argue. Your brother may steal your money. He may have stole your money. But that's your brother. You got to deal with it. Right? And so, inshallah ta'ala, I know this time, we're a little bit over the time for the salat. But the brother made the point, so inshallah we took the time to comment. Alhamdulillah, I believe that the food is here. The food is here. The food is here, alhamdulillah. And again, I appreciate everyone for coming out and taking your time to come down here to the masjid. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to... What's up, Sammy? I'm sorry? The Smart Quran competition? We'll talk about that later, inshallah. May Allah Azza wa Jal bless us, may accept from us our good deeds and righteous actions, may pardon us of our sins and forgive us of our mistakes. هذا والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد. Hold on, let me turn this off so that we don't...